Hi there, I'm Si and welcome to my channel called Nugget of Wisdom. I'm very keen to use all of the wisdom and knowledge that I've learned to express my perspective on issues that are happening today in the world. Because I really think that that's the best way to be able to help others. Wisdom is wonderful. It's a wonderful thing to talk about. It's a wonderful thing to sit around the fire and have a conversation with each other about words of wisdom and rights and wrongs and truths and so on. But it's far better to use that wisdom to try to help others. And for me, there's one event that's currently going on in the world which directly affects you and I. We're Westerners, and the most likely truth is that the money you earn in your job every week and the tax you pay, some of that money, and in some cases a significant amount, is being used to make weapons to kill other people. So whether I like it or not, we're all kind of accomplices. We're all implicated in the deaths of other people, in the wars that our governments support, arm, help. So we should really be very careful about trying to understand what our governments are really doing. What the scoring is for the relative truths that are being used to convince you to help fund the manufacture of bombs and missiles and weapons that will end the lives of people, that will end the lives of young men who probably had no choice but to be involved in the battles and the wars that they're in, that will end the lives of innocent men, civilians, that will end the lives of women and young children. I've got 3 children. One of my children's lives were ended. If one of my children was badly hurt, it would devastate me. I don't think I or any parent would probably get over the loss or the death of a child. So it would be very hypocritical of me to feel such pain and sorrow and suffering and fear of loss and not feel a sadness, a deep sadness and frustration at some of my brothers and sisters around the world losing their lives, just because they happen to be far away from me and I can't physically see them. It's not acceptable for me to just go, it doesn't matter. So I know absolutely nothing about Gaza. Never been to Gaza, never been to Lebanon. I don't think I've ever met an Israeli. I may have, but I don't remember. I've definitely not met somebody from Hamas. I know very little about the religions, the Muslim religion, the Jewish. Yes, I've read about them, and there's a lot of good in those religions. But I'm totally ignorant here. For me to get information about what's going on there so that I can be sure that I'm not supporting something that's going to lead to the deaths of my brothers and sisters in Israel, in Palestine, in Gaza, I'm going to have to think, because I know nothing about this. So who do I believe? Who do I believe when it comes to supporting a group of people to make bombs and weapons, to hand them over to others, to give support to the killing of other people? Well, it's remarkably easy. And this is the amazing thing about the modern world. Because all you have to do is just type in UN on your mobile phone. The United Nations. So they could be deemed to be a fairly reputable organization. I think from what I see, there seems to be a lot of inability to just get consensus on anything. But I have a feeling that when they put figures out, they're going to be careful. And also those figures are going to probably be, my guess, they'll be underestimates of the casualties involved in these wars. It's never going to serve the countries that are involved in supporting what's happening at the moment to see overestimates of the numbers of people who are being killed. So I would say that the information from the press organisation for the UN is going to give us a reasonable insight into what's really going on. So I'm just going to read you a little excerpt here from their press release. It says, UNICEF is positioned to quickly scale up the delivery of humanitarian aid, but more resources are needed to meet growing needs. Noting that 1.7 million people in Gaza are displaced. Just want to repeat that. 1.7 million people in Gaza are displaced, half of whom are children. In addition, UNICEF estimates that 450,000 children in the West Bank need humanitarian assistance. The Gaza Strip is the world's most dangerous place to be a child, with more than 5,300 Palestinian children killed thus far. 5,300 Palestinian children. That amounts to about, or more than 115 a day. And more than 1,200 children under rubble are unaccounted for. At the same time, 35 Israeli children have been killed and more than 30 have been held hostage since the 7th of October. So, I'm going to just give you a thought experiment here. Supposing I was dogmatic. Supposing I was a dogmatic Israeli who was really bitter and upset about the killing of those 35 innocent children. And I was to say, the mothers and the civilian men in Gaza are all implicated in this. And they're all part of this whole process of terrorism. And we're justified in killing them. Supposing in my anguish and my frustration, my pain at the loss of my children, some of those 35 children, I was to say that. My response would be, I don't agree. But I don't know. I don't know what the civilian women and the civilian men of Gaza are doing. Yes, military targets and members of militant groups are targets in this situation. It's a war. I don't know what the parents and the mothers are doing. Maybe they're there in the tunnels helping out. Who knows? I don't know. But I do know, and we all know, that it's very difficult to argue that children are terrorists. The children are involved in making weapons, constructing bombs, committing acts. There might be a few, but the reality is it's highly likely that most of those children are completely innocent victims. Also, if somebody kills my child, why on earth would I mean, apart from feeling just revenge, just total hatred and revenge. Why on earth could I ever believe that killing somebody else's child was going to fix things? My guess is that the thousands of parents of the 5,300 Palestinian children are going to be devastated. They're going to be full of pain, sorrow, sadness, and in a lot of cases, revenge. And it just leads to the building of more terrorism. Surely, a policy of killing thousands of children because of the wrongdoing of others and killing 30 of yours, or 35 of yours, just leads to more killing. Isn't it totally obvious? It's obvious to me. But more than this, when I was a child in school, every now and again, there would be a fight. And we had a big play field with some trees around it. And every now and again, I'd be having my lunch at the playground, and next thing I'd hear, fight, 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 fight. And some boy would be ready to fight another boy, fisticuffs, fight, fight. And so all the children would all run off to this little area with the trees and hide. They'd gather round and they'd watch two boys beat the hell out of each other. Blood, torn clothes, often very vicious. And all the children would be in there supporting their side. Go on, get him, knock him down, yeah. And some of the children, including me, would be on the edges, like, wondering what to do, and should we be looking at this and looking at this? Is it wrong? Is it right? What should we do? Should we say anything for fear we might end up getting into a fight as well? And then eventually, someone would alert the teacher. In this case, it was the PE teacher, and the PE teacher was a 6'4", big, strong guy. And he'd come down, he'd run down, break open the group, grab the two boys that were fighting, take them out. And he'd order all the rest of us to get away or we'd be in big trouble. And he'd grab those boys, take them into the school. And then, no matter how much those boys said, no, it's his fault, it wasn't me, it was him, and he wouldn't listen to either of them. He would just stop the fighting. He would just stop it. He wouldn't take sides and say, no, it was your fault. In fact, it's your fault, so I'm going to continue the fight. I'm going to help all these boys, other boys, to help you destroy him and his friends. That never happened. It never happened. The teacher stopped the fight. And then, of course, later on when things had calmed down, there were repercussions. There'd be an investigation and so on, and the boy might get expelled or suspended or have some sort of sanctions. So how on earth can it be that there isn't anyone at the moment who's able to be the PE teacher between Hamas and the Israelis to come in and say, we have to stop this. We just have to stop it. We will have time to figure out who's wrong and who's right. We have to stop it, and we have to protect the people of Israel. We have to protect those people so that there can't be any more attack. And we have to protect all these innocent people in Gaza who've got nothing to do with this. These children, these thousands of children. And these thousands of residents who live in Israel along the border who've got nothing to do with this either. We've got to protect them all and just stop this. And then separate them all. if they have to, bring in the UN, some sort of peacekeeping organization that can bring soldiers from countries that have nothing to do with this and are neutral and can form a protective zone between the two. And then very quickly, maybe through the UN, set up some sort of grouping that can say, right, what are we going to do here? Do we need to take out the terrorists to protect Israel, the people of Israel? How do we do that? We need to talk to all these other countries, Syria, Iran, bring them in to around the table, because this is a serious problem, a crisis that could lead to all sorts of problems in the world. Where is this happening? Why isn't it happening? So you see, I don't need to know exactly what's going on there, because very, very simple information, which we all have access to, will tell us that something seriously bad is happening here. And there are organizations in the world that claim to be highly moral. And there are countries in the world that claim to be highly moral. The US, that goes around the world telling everybody what it believes is right and how they should run their affairs and what democracy is. The Pope. Leaders of the European Union. No one has to condone the wrongdoings of any organization and the killing of anyone in order to make sure that people are protected. My dad always said 2 wrongs don't make a right. Thousands of wrongs don't make 35 rights. And we, as the people who live in the West, who love our children and would be devastated if one of our children just had an accident, not buried on their rubble, are homeless, are starving, are dead, or with life-changing injuries, we would be devastated. But our money, our tax money, is going from our accounts to pay for military strategies, weaponry, to help in these situations, to help do something that is clearly out of order and wrong on anyone's account. Not only is our money being used to support things or not to intervene on things that are clearly on the truth scale completely and utterly unacceptable, but it's also putting all of us in danger. Because the reputation of the countries that we live in the West are being absolutely destroyed. And people in other countries who have narratives about imperialism, about both the West being obsessed with getting the resources of other countries, about, controlling and domineering West, they'll just use these figures from the UN to convince their populations that we, the people who love our children, the people who would never like to see a child being killed or hurt or injured, the people who don't realize that their money from their salaries and hard work is going into things that are totally unacceptable. They will use this to demonize us, to say we are really bad people, which then leads to all sorts of problems later on, potential attacks on the West, and so on and so forth. The last bit of this that really surprises me is that when they talk about Israel and Gaza, they talk about this two-state solution. I know nothing about the boundaries or the borders of that country, but I had a look at a map. And to me, it looked pretty difficult to have a two-state solution where you've got populations of people who've been displaced, where you've got small little enclaves and areas, where you've got people who are working in Israel but living in Gaza, and you've got highways and roads going across different territories. And I think the whole idea of a two-state solution to me is very, very suspect. And then you might say, well, what is the answer? Well, ask John Major, ask Tony Blair, ask Bill Clinton, ask Hillary Clinton, ask Obama. They all saw a solution and were involved with a solution in Northern Ireland, where they didn't divide Northern Ireland into a Catholic and a Protestant zones, where they didn't allow one side to ethnically cleanse the other side, where they didn't provide weapons and all sorts of support for one side, they didn't do it. What did they do? They gave them a parliament, a regional parliament. They took out the Royal Ulster Constabulary and changed it to the police force of Northern Ireland, and set up a whole pile of rules to make sure both sides had fair representation. They changed all of the structures and policies within the area to give all of the population a fair hearing when it came to rights to social housing, rights to positions in government. They made sure that everybody was equally represented in government, and even the two sides, the deputy prime minister, whatever you call him, the deputy head of the regional government, and the head have like equal powers. And yes, today they're still arguing. The groupings in there are still arguing about actually participating in this parliament, but it hasn't led to the deaths of thousands and thousands of children and mothers and innocent civilians. Very easy in Israel and Palestine and Gaza to just set up a completely new state. Give it a new name. Call it peace. This is going to be peace, a new country called peace. Call it love. It's going to respect all the religions, and the languages, and the heritages of all the people. It's going to make sure all of the people are represented in government and in politics. The state is not going to take on a dogma or some sort of tribal identity that sets it apart from the diverse ranges of different people that live there. And it will take time and a lot of haggling. Look at South Africa. Nelson Mandela, a man who spent most of his life in prison. So why wasn't South Africa plunged into war, into segregation? Because one man was able to stand up above all of it. And he was able to show that he had love and compassion for everybody. His white brothers, his black brothers. The white babies, the black babies. Everyone. And he managed to cool everything down, just like that teacher in the school. He was the guy saying, hold on, stop. And this is a man who had every reason to be filled with hatred, but he wasn't. So my nugget of wisdom here is, I speak to you, my brothers and sisters who live here in the UK, who live in America and live in Europe, whose money has been spent on these wars. I'm asking you to look at the information, the simple information, and ask yourself, is this right? Should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I a participant in something that's leading to the deaths of thousands of children and blackening me and my name and my country and bringing potential harm to me and my children? And if you really care, like this video, share it. Share it with as many people as you can, and then at least you will be doing something to demonstrate that you love your fellow man, you love your fellow Israeli, Palestinian, the mothers, the children, the fathers. That you love them all, and that you want somebody to stand up and say, stop. Stop this. It's inhumane. It's wrong. Thank you for listening to my video, and I look forward to the next topic that I want to talk about.